Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our OLA nominations open house today. We're very happy that you were able to join us and are giving some consideration to a position within OLA. I am very happy to have a series of amazing people with us today to talk a bit about their experience with OLA. And there are some OLA staff here as well to answer any of your questions. I'm just going to very quickly show you an overview of the process just to kind of get everyone on the same page so that we all know what things look like. I'm going to share this link in the chat, which is in case you need it for your own. If you don't want to follow along, I will share my screen just so you can see it. But I'm just going to show you the page of on the OLA website of the nomination form. So on this page here, you'll be able to see all of the positions that are open for nomination for this upcoming year. So we have roles basically on every single one of our councils coming up, and they're all listed here. And then below that, you'll see the link to submit a nomination. So if you click on that form, you are able to nominate yourself. I know sometimes the language tricks people up because you're able to nominate someone else as well. But feel free to nominate yourself. Nominations are due by November 15th, so you have a couple of more weeks' time here. You can fill out your information here, which is basically just giving us an idea of who you are, how we can get in touch with you. If you are employed right now, let us know where it is that you work and what your title is. And then you can upload your picture and your platform here. So there's more information on that page we were just on. Sorry, my landline's ringing in the background. Which is right here on a sample platform. So you can view more about what we mean by platform and the type of information that you may want to include there. The only reason when we would use a platform is if a number of people are nominated for a single position, then that position will go to election. But if you are the only person who is nominated, then you would be acclaimed and we wouldn't use your platform. But if there are a number of people, then your platform would be shared with all of the members who are eligible for voting in that election. Okay, so that's a very quick and dirty basic overview of the process, but now I'd like to get into the amazing people that we have joining us today. I will also just mention, if you have questions at any point during this process, please feel free to put them into the chat box and we'll address them as we go through. And then we'll have some time at the end as well for additional questions. So with that, I'm going to get started and just ask each of you to introduce yourselves who have joined us here today. Abeer, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. If you want to tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your role is within OLA.
Absolutely. Sorry about my cat. I'm just going to get her out of the way. So hi, folks. My name is Abeer Siddiqui. I am the science librarian here at McMaster University, and I currently serve as a counselor at large in OCULA. So that's the Council for College and University Libraries.
Thanks, Abeer. Hélène, would you like to go next?
Yes, bonjour tout le monde. My name is Hélène Carrier. I'm Associate University Librarian for Learning and User Services at the University of Ottawa. And I'm currently finishing my second year as president of ABO-Franco, which is the Association des Bibliothèques de l'Ontario Franco. So that's my involvement with OLA.
Merci. Thank you, Hélène. And Sarah.
Thank you, Michelle. So my name is Sarah Macintyre. I am the manager of board and strategic services at Ottawa Public Library. And I am also in my second year as president of OLITA. So it's the Ontario Library Technology, OLITA Technology Association. Oh my gosh.
Information technology.
Thank you. My brain is fried. So before I was president, vice president and president, I was also a member at large of OLITA. So I've had a long time working with that group. So there we go. That's my experience.
That's great. Thank you. So the first question I'm going to ask of each of you, and Sarah, I'll just come right back to you, is what initially interested you in becoming involved in association work and volunteering with OLA?
I was very fortunate when I was working at St. Thomas Public Library, where I was before Ottawa. My CEO was very supportive and actually was the one who said, like, you're working, I was managing the technology department. She said, you should really join OLITA and you should get involved with OLA because it'll enrich your work. and keep us connected to the association. So she actually encouraged me to apply as a member, and I did, and I really enjoyed it. But I think that if she hadn't really encouraged it and kind of talked it up, I don't know how I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have felt confident applying, but really it was my CEO who was really supportive.
That's great. Abeer, how about you?
So I actually applied only in my second year into the profession, and I applied with a great bit of trepidation and anxiety, just not knowing if I even was qualified for a position at OCULA. And I was inspired to apply by my colleague, Andrew Colgoni, who at the time also served as an OCULA counselor at large. And I saw that he had a significant amount of opportunities to connect with colleagues and like-minded folks at other institutions. And that's something that I really wasn't experiencing in my role as it existed. And I was happy and welcomed by OCULA when I was accepted into the role. And I found that even if I felt a lot of imposter syndrome about applying and about running, there was a lot of support in place and a lot of great appetite for change and a diversity of perspective, regardless of where you are coming from.
That's great. Yeah, I agree. I think one of the greatest benefits of being part of association work is the network and being able to work with people from different sectors sometimes, or just different organizations is such a huge part of this work and this role. It's great. And Hélène, how about you? What did you first become interested, or why did you become interested and become involved?
Actually, I had a colleague at the University of Ottawa, Maryse Laflamme, who was president of ABO-Franco. And one day we went for lunch together, and she said to me, you know, this was one of my best experience, and we are looking for a vice president right now. You know, I wonder who might be interested. And I thought, you know, maybe I should be interested. That sounds like really interesting. But at that point, I was working at the School of Information Studies at the University of Ottawa as interim director. And I thought this also could be really beneficial because, as you said, Michelle, I know somewhat about academic libraries in Ontario, but this would also get me in contact with people from public libraries, from school libraries, because ABO-Franco is a small division, but it is multi-sector. So I thought this would also really be beneficial for the school. And I must say, as an academic librarian, we are allocated time for community service. So this is always encouraged. And so all of these factors combine in me getting involved.
That's great. So Abeer, you've mentioned already, you know, the ability to increase your network and develop some skills, maybe in terms of networking and that kind of thing. I'm wondering for each of you, what other skills were you able to develop as part of your role, whether it might be something to do with leadership or project management? Is there something you can think of that you were able to become more skilled at in your role that you maybe weren't able to develop as part of your day-to-day work? Who wants to start?
I can start.
Sure.
So the first thing that I found in my role as president was really being responsible for making the agendas and keeping everybody on target in the meetings. So that kind of governance aspect was new to me and has been really, really helpful just in general in my work life. Maintaining those agendas and kind of following up with the action logs. And that was really, really helpful. The other big one was this past year, planning Digital Odyssey, our annual conference in a virtual environment, was something that I'd never really done. And our initial chit chat meetings were kind of a huge mess. And then Michelle kindly recommended that we build a spreadsheet out and then helped me develop those skills so that our planning wasn't quite a mess. But that's something that I really had no experience doing before and has been hugely valuable.
Yeah, I think the project management skills it's usually so interesting to see who on the board has more experience than others. And I think it's interesting to watch everyone kind of increase those skills or feel more comfortable in project management as they progress in this work. What about you, Abeer? Do you have any other skills to add?
Yeah, I echo everything that Sarah said and what you said, Michelle, about networking and leadership and communication and all of that fun stuff. But here's one unexpected skill that I developed over the course of my term as counselor. So I'm very active in our union at McMaster. So I'm currently past president and have been on the union for the past 4 years now. So a lot of the work that I do in that capacity is advocacy around labor equity. And when I joined OCULA, I realized that the contingent that I was now representing was not just composed of librarians. It was composed of library staff, library assistants, associate university librarians, administrators, managers, all sorts of people. And so I really like this opportunity to develop skills in negotiating and navigating power dynamics within OCULA and within the people that I now represent and facilitating those difficult conversations. So that was a fantastic learning experience.
That's great. Hélène?
For me too, actually, it was developing advocacy skills. You know, at University of Ottawa, we are a bilingual environment, and there's always a level of advocacy that come with this, but to be aware of issue across the province, of people who are advocate, who are leader in the field, and becoming articulate about what are the issues, understanding what are the needs. Just doing an exercise with the OLA office, preparing a brief for a roundtable at Heritage Canada. And even recently, 2 weeks ago, I did a media interview on the issue of access to French books in Canada, outside Quebec. And so just developing an interest, just going deeper into emerging and more complex issues, and just really understanding what is advocacy is a new skill for me.
Absolutely. None of you mentioned budgets, but I know that can be a source of stress among people who join, but I think that's a huge skill that people often hone as part of their work in OLA, especially if you're managing events, being aware of what things cost and keeping an eye on budgets and things. I think that when I was first involved with OLITA, that was definitely a skill set that I didn't have to deal with much in my day-to-day, but definitely my association work forced me to confront my fear of dealing with budgets. I mean, you've mentioned, Abeer alluded to, you know, the imposter syndrome. And I have heard from a number of people who say, you know, oh, I don't know if I have enough experience to do this, or not quite sure if they fit in for various reasons, you know, not having the right type of certification or training, to which I say there are no requirements for these roles to have an MLIS or anything like that. In fact, we love, I think, if more library technicians were to take part, or just, you know, library staff who might not have an MLIS, I think that'd be great. I am curious to know, though, coming in, were you thinking that there's a skill set that you could bring to your work? Was there something that you were already doing in your work that you were excited to maybe share as part of your role? Sarah, is there anything you can think of?
Yeah, so when I started, when I joined OLITA, we had just kind of opened our makerspace at St. Thomas Public Library. And so, you know, I was really involved in that, like kind of building it from the ground up. And so I felt as though, you know, that kind of expertise could be really handy, especially if we were supporting folks who maybe weren't quite there yet or weren't sure how to advocate for those kinds of services. And OLITA also does the tech lending libraries that we buy, well, it's kind of paused right now due to the pandemic, but very often we'll have like tech gadgets that we lend out to OLA members. And so there was kind of a maker slant to a lot of those at that certain time as well. So I felt like that kind of experience was handy for the council.
Absolutely. Abeer or Hélène?
Yeah, is general enthusiasm a skill that I bring to OCULA? Because that's what I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was like really fresh into my career when I became a counselor. So I couldn't really articulate, oh, these are the specific leadership skills or management skills or project development skills that I bring to the table. But I think I came in with a lot of ideas and with a lot of perspective and lived experience that was able to be translated into OCULA. And I think OCULA, much like the rest of OLA, has an appetite for that lived experience, for that diversity of thought, and for that diversity of experience. And I feel there's a culture of mentorship and support that helps us manifest that into action. So that's what I think I brought in.
That's great. Hélène, anything to add?
Perhaps I brought facilitation skills, collaboration and teamwork, something we use quite a bit in our work, but just because we are working with a team of volunteers, making decisions together and now making them virtually, and just bringing everyone focusing on doing a project or making a decision or debating and bringing those skills have been, I think, helpful.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Sarah, you've already mentioned that your CEO was a big supporter of OLA and wanting to get people involved. And Hélène mentioned, an academic requirement for community service. I'm wondering though, in terms of getting support from your workplace, I mean, you're in a different space now, Sarah. So are there different strategies, or did you have to justify to your workplace the time that is involved in working with OLA, and how would you go about that? Or how would you suggest people go about that?
Yeah, I'm super lucky that I didn't have to do that. Having said that, though, it can be a fair time commitment. Like it's not overwhelming. It's not too much to handle, but you have to be dedicated and you have to be committed. So you really do have to make sure that you're arranging your time appropriately. I mean, for me, it's been very clear that the outcomes and the skills and the knowledge that I've learned volunteering with OLA have been the return on investment significant more than the time put in. And I think that one of the things that's really fantastic is all the different connections that I've made with folks from around the province, right? So now if I have a question or I'm wondering something, I have this wide network of people that I can reach out to and get ideas from and pick their brains. And that's hugely beneficial, just like on a very kind of basic level. I wouldn't have made these kinds of networks and these connections without volunteering on OLA. So, that helps me work more effectively in my job. And I think it's also really important for libraries to focus on giving back. We're stronger together. And the more that we can collaborate together, the stronger our decisions are going to be. So I feel like there's no downside, even though it does take some time. I think the time is well worth it.
That's great. And Abeer, I mean, I know McMaster has a long history, like you mentioned, Andrew, and many people from McMaster have been involved in OLA in the past, but any other thoughts on, getting your employer to kind of buy in on this type of work?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'll take a different perspective on this question, because I think, at least in my experience of working as a librarian, we have this culture of saying yes to a lot of different responsibilities and projects, and maybe regretting having so much on our plate all of a sudden. And so McMaster is a place where you don't necessarily have to seek permission or support from your employer to do the work. You just sort of do the work, and it's part of your role as an academic librarian. But I feel like OLA and my experience in OCULA really helped me figure out how to negotiate and have conversations with my employer about setting expectations, setting boundaries, and articulating the value of the work that I did with OCULA and with OLA back to my employer. So developing those skills was quite useful. And then also just learning how to say no as well. So I'm immensely proud of the work that I've been able to do through OCULA and through OLA, but I'm also very, very grateful that OCULA is run by librarians and library staff who have that experience of not wanting to say no ever, but feeling that they must learn how to.
Right, for sure. Hélène, any other thoughts on that?
I have never felt overwhelmed, even if as a vice president, we are in dual role, both as a divisional president and as an OLA board member. Throughout the year, I would say 1 to 2 hours a week but this was my creative time, my fun time. For me, work is always busy and always interesting, but the time that I dedicated to working on OLA, on my involvement with OLA was something I enjoy. And I always felt also that the OLA office is well organized, that board meetings are well planned. Always, and the executive director always takes, request time just at an appropriate level. So there's a time commitment, but it always feels valuable.
That's great. I'm glad you pointed that out, Hélène, that both you and Sarah are the president of your divisions, ABO-Franco and of OLITA, which is a little bit of a different time commitment from someone who's a counselor, for example. And I just wanted to kind of point that out, that if you are the president or the vice president of a council, you are automatically also on the OLA board. So you're attending your council meetings and you're attending your board meetings. Can you speak a little bit more to, even though it was your fun time, your creative time, what does the time commitment look like for you? So generally, how much time is being asked of you for those meetings and any other projects that you're doing that align with council?
You're asking me, Michelle?
I am. Sorry. Yes, Hélène.
As I say, I would estimate that, board meetings will take maybe 2 hours and a half, and maybe once every 2 months, and divisional meetings, maybe 5 or 6 in a year. Other than that, I would dedicate at least 1 or 2 hours per week throughout the year to my ABO OLA involvement. And except on busy times leading up to super conference, for example. So it's something that, as I say, but it was always steady. Every board meeting, you do need to prepare, review the documentation. As Sarah pointed out, organizing agenda, contacting people. But whenever and the nature of a volunteer organization is there's always more to do. There's always a new committee, always a new issue, and you can always raise your hand to do more. So, when I felt more that I was up to speed, because the vice president here was like a year of being an apprenticeship. And then, so once I was fortunate because of the pandemic to be 2-year president. So I felt more that I knew how things work, and then I took on more things, but out of my choice.
Okay, that's great. And Sarah, same type of question there. What was your time? What was the demand on your time?
Yeah, I would say pretty similar. So yeah, the board meetings are maybe 2.5 hours. You have to prepare ahead of time. I've been assisting on some, committee work in terms of strategic planning and in terms of governance. So that's been some additional hours, but I opt into those, right? Because I find governance interesting, and I'm interested in being involved in the strategic plan. So, you don't have to put your hand up for those type of projects, but if you have the capacity to do it, it just makes it all the more enriching. I would say that OLITA does not take a tremendous amount of time. Having said that, though, the beginning of the year planning the Digital Odyssey conference tends to be heavier because we're actually planning an all-day conference. And this year I ended up bugging everybody to come to every meeting, but usually that's done in a subcommittee level, and it's not quite as aggressive as I made it this spring. Yeah, so, like Hélène said, probably something like 2 hours a week if you were to average it. Yeah. Not for me. I have not found it to be unmanageable.
That's great. And Abeer, same question. And I mean, I think you and Sarah are likely you have very similar, because Abeer, you were responsible for planning the OCULA conference this past year. So as part, in addition to your counselor roles, you also had the event to plan. So how did that look like in terms of your time management?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would echo everything that Sarah said about it's very much about what you are willing to take on and what are areas of focus that you want to explore and learn more about. So I organized the conference this year with my colleague and very, very good friend now, Olia Delphin from Humber College. And we explored questions that we were interested in. We were exploring themes that we wanted other librarians and other library folks to be interested in. And so the time investment never felt like work to us. It felt like Hélène said, creative energy. It felt like a time to just sort of play around with what we think librarianship could look like in the future. I think just like with skill development in OCULA, it is very much about how much time and how much work you want to put in, and that is sort of related to how much you get back as well. It kind of, depending on what areas you want to focus in on, what skills you want to learn, what kind of experiences you want to grow into, all of that sort of adds up that way. I think the other thing about working in OCULA is that everybody's busy time aligned. So everyone knew that, hey, like everybody's an academic person here, which meant that the fall and winter semesters are off limits. No one's planning big conferences around that. And it worked really well to have everybody on the same schedule. So our conferences for spring or summer.
That's very true. Somewhat unique, I'd say, to OCULA and OPLA, whereas ABO and OLITA definitely have multi-sector representation on their councils. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, all of you. If anyone in the audience has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We're about to wrap up. Are there any kind of closing thoughts or encouragement that you would give to people, reasons why to take part right now? I'll start with Hélène.
It's been, of my long career, one of the most rewarding experiences to be involved with OLA. Just simply. I only regret that I haven't done it earlier, actually.
That's big praise. Thanks, Hélène. Sarah?
I agree 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's rewarding. It's fun. The OLA staff is great to work with. They're really efficient and effective. I have really loved meeting people that I wouldn't otherwise get to meet, seeing behind the scenes in super conference and conference planning. It's not a huge time commitment. It's hugely rewarding, definitely worth doing, definitely worth advocating for yourself, because you'll find that you'll be able to do things that you wouldn't have maybe otherwise had the opportunity to do. So if you have a supervisor who's maybe on the fence, it's worth fighting for. It's worth pushing to become an OLA volunteer for sure.
That's great. And Abeer?
What more is there to add? I don't have a long career like Hélène, but even in my short 5 years, it is definitely one of the most invaluable experiences. The relationships alone are worth it. I think I'm very happy to call the entire OCULA Council my very, very good friends.
They're all on your speed dial now. If we were dialing people, we would have them on speed dial. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm also just going to point out, in case we haven't mentioned this, but all of the councils have been meeting virtually for the past 20 months and will continue to for the foreseeable future. So for anyone who is a bit further out of the GTA and concerned about that, they have been meeting virtually, and I think that's been working pretty well on a regular basis, and they've been using lots of tools to collaborate and communicate online as well. So we hope that you will join us no matter where you are coming from. Thanks so much to all of you for your time today, for your commitment to OLA. I also would like to say it's a pleasure working with all of you. You're all fantastic ambassadors for OLA, and you've done such great work in your time in the councils. So thanks so much for your time today. And if anyone else has any questions following this, please feel free to reach out. We're going to post this up on the website. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Bye bye.